Hello, I'm Jim Hudson, and welcome to the first of our two-tape series on the introduction of the hammered dulcimer. The instrument, the hammered dulcimer, is just a wonderful thing. It has a real rich heritage, and I'm really glad that you have an instrument and that you're wanting to learn to play. The main thing to me is to remember the instrument's 4,000 years old, give or take a year or two, and no one really knows how it should be played, so there's no right way or no wrong way. Don't worry about feeling free about experimenting. Just have fun with it. And if you reach the point where you're not enjoying playing, then stop what you're doing, go outside and hoe the garden or wash dishes, wash the car, whatever makes you feel good. Then go back in and get your dulcimer and have fun with what you're doing. One of the first questions that I'm usually asked is, wow, I have this thing, and now what do I do? Or how do I find a teacher? Where are their books? Where do I get sources of information about the instrument? There are a lot of different ways that you can go about it. I would contact first the local music dealer in your area, and if they're not able to supply what you need, then my address or Gene and Lee Schilling will have their address listed at the end of the tape. And you're more than welcome to write to us with any inquiries or any questions, and we'll try to get back to you as promptly as we can. There are a lot of books, a lot of tapes that are on the market. I brought just a few that have worked well for me and for people that I know in the past. This particular book's written by Carrie Crompton. It has a companion tape with it, which is a real benefit because you can hear what you should be doing as well as seeing the notes and the tablature. It's a very good book. This is just entitled Hammered Dulcimer Solos. This one entitled Tunes for Hammered Dulcimer is written by Linda Thompson down in Texas. Linda does a real good job with this. There's about 43 songs, and she follows through a real good logical progression of where you should start with simple tunes, and then each one teaches you a new hammering technique. This book, Hammered Dulcimer, written by Peter Pickow, it's a very good book, but it's a little bit advanced. It might be something that you would want to take a look at later on after you've been playing for a while. It's a very good source for new songs, but not quite as strong on the beginning rudiments of playing as what you'll find in some of the other materials. This book was written by Philip Mason. It's entitled The Hammered Dulcimer Instruction Book. This is really a good book. He talks about a lot of the different tuning methods, different chord patterns, goes real heavy into the instruction as well as a good tablature and note system. Highly recommend this book as well. One of the best sources that you'll find for going or for learning to play is going to festivals, stuff like that. And this little book right here, this is a news publication put out quarterly. It's edited by Maddie McNeil in West Virginia, or in Virginia. She does a real good job with this, and inside here, as well as tips on playing and so forth, is a listing of local dulcimer clubs. There's a big list of all the different festivals that you can go to, which is an excellent source of material for learning to play. You can drop a line to us, and we'll be glad to put you in touch with Maddie, and she can tell you how to subscribe to the Dulcimer Player News. In addition to that, Maddie also keeps a real comprehensive list of teachers in all of the areas across the United States as well as she can. She would be able to put you in touch with a teacher if you'd like to have one. There are a lot of accessories that come with the hammered dulcimer. You can really tie up a bunch of money in a hurry. But one of the basic things, this probably came with your dulcimer. This is a tuning wrench, and they're available in all different sizes and shapes. I don't think that one particularly serves any purpose better than the other. They all tune the dulcimer. As far as tuning, while we're on that subject, this is a little chromatic pitch pipe. This is a little deal that has the names of the notes written on it, and you just simply blow on this and reference the note that you want, and then tune your dulcimer up to that. Most players eventually wind up investing in an electronic tuner. One like this is put out by Cord, runs around $85. You can find them for less, and most of them are real good, but you do need a chromatic tuner. Be sure and specify to your dealer that you need a chromatic tuner. The real tools for playing the instrument are hammers. And there are many different hammers as there are people that make them. Now this particular set, there's two sets here that are just alike, except one has a wooden surface for playing with. The other one has a piece of leather glued on, which will give you a soft sound as you're playing the dulcimer. The hammers that I use look kind of like tongue depressors, but they're real functional because there's wood on one side, leather on the other, so to change hammers, I just simply flip them over as I'm playing. Regardless of what hammers you're using, really the most important thing that you can remember is that these have to become an extension of yourself as you're playing. They have to become your hands. So you should try, when you're switching from one set of hammers to another, to make sure that they're the same length, because what happens as you're playing, if you play with a longer set of hammers, you automatically have to readjust your reach as you're going for the strings, or if you have a shorter set, you'll have a tendency to underreach. So try, if you can, as you purchase different sets of hammers, to get some that are all basically the same length, and it helps if they're fairly close to the same weight. But one of the tendencies in playing the hammered dulcimer, and I think it's more psychological effect than anything else, is that, well, this really needs to be fast. Fast is not always good, and there'll be a natural tendency to rush, at least there is for me. And one of the things that I use to combat that is a metronome. This particular one is electric. You change the speed by adjusting the dial. But you can buy them for $19 or $20 that wind up, and it has a pendulum on it that swings back and forth, so you can set the time for the music. This is going to do two things. It's going to keep you with a real steady beat, but it will also put you in a position to force you, in order to stay with the beat, to stop thinking about what you're doing and go ahead and play. Let's take a little bit of time now and take a look at the tuning chart on the hammer dulcimer. Okay, as you look at your instrument, the chart that I have here representative of the face of the dulcimer, there's some parts that you need to really be aware of what they're called as you're reading the material, so that you'll know what they're speaking of. This bridge over on this side is called the treble bridge. The one on the right side, the far right, is known as the bass bridge. Of course, you have your pin blocks on the sides, which is where the pins hook into. As you begin looking at the dulcimer, it's really important that you understand how many sets of strings that you have. Now, your dulcimer may have two with 5 sets of strings per note. That really is not as important as what note they begin on and how many sets you have on your instrument. Now, you can determine whether you have what's known as a 12, 11, or 15 treble bridge and the number of sets on the bass bridge. If you count up from the bottom and you have 15 sets of treble strings and 14 sets of bass strings, and you have what's known as a 15-14. Russell Cook in Texas builds one that's a 16-15. Jim Taylor in Mars Hill builds one that's a 18-17. He builds a 21-21. There's no real standard as far as the number of strings that are on an instrument, but you can determine what yours is. For the most part, we're going to be talking about a 12-11 or a 15-14. The instrument that I play is 15-14. They're a little bit different, or the tune is the same, but the way the instrument's laid out is a little bit different. If you have 12 sets of treble strings, then your instrument is going to begin right here at this G. Now this C above it is middle C. These black marks, the X's that I have on the chart, represent your position markers on your dulcimer. So your dulcimer will begin with the G, A, B, middle C. Then the next bottom note would be this C sharp right here. Now if you play a 15-14 like my instrument, then it begins down here with the D, which is, if you take the D above middle C, this is an octave below that. And then tunes up from there with G sharp, or the sharp of this G being the bottom note on this side. Now if you'll notice, there's some check marks on here, and the reason those are there, this denotes notes that are the same. That means that this A is the same as this A over here. Now the way you can always find that, if you start at the position marker here, this G, and come across here, you'll have an octave. But if you drop across at this A and go back over to the position marker and one note above it, those will be your duplicated notes. From the position marker, 5 notes up, or 1 note up from the position marker, becomes the next note. And this is confusing, and I know that it is, but when we get the dulcimer and begin to look at it, you'll see what I'm talking about. But the dulcimer is just plumb full of patterns. All we're going to talk about, a lot we're going to talk about, are patterns. And the intention of this recording of this tape is not so much to teach you songs, but we'll deal with that some, but primarily I want to equip you with the tools that you need to be able to learn any song. And one of the primary things that you need is a basic understanding of the note patterns on your dulcimer. Always from a position marker straight across to a position marker is an octave. And if you'll look, this E, you have an E here, you've got a G here, you have a G here, this F sharp. Always 4 across is your octaves, and the same thing here. D and D is an octave, E and E is an octave. So as we begin to play, you'll see a little bit more about what we're talking about. I have a mystery arm with me in the studio. Get you to hand me the other chart. Thank you. About scales and chord patterns. The main thing that you always need to remember, that no matter where you begin on the dulcimer, this is what we call a generic position marker. It can be anywhere on the dulcimer. But if you start on the bass bridge at a position marker, if you go 4 notes up, When you reach that position marker, that's your signal that it's time to go down and to the left to the position marker and 4 notes up. And that's your basic scale pattern. On the treble bridge, start at any position marker, go 4 notes up. When you reach that position marker, that's your indication that you need to come down to the left, back to the position marker, and up 4 notes. And that pattern will hold true on the instrument. Now this is what we call a standard tuning. In Michigan, they use a different tuning, which it's just really confusing, but the bass note is directly across from the notes. If your instrument is that way and you would like to have it retuned, then I would suggest you consult a dealer or go back to the person that built the instrument and ask for a little bit more traditional tuning. This is the one that all of the books that we talked about earlier talk about. Let's get the Dulcimer and see how this relates to your instrument. So that you can see what I was talking about with the number of strings and all, I'm actually standing around behind the Dulcimer in the hopes that this will let you see the fingerboard or the keyboard a little bit easier. Now we had talked about sets of strings. If you look real closely at the instrument, there are 15 courses of 2 strings per course on the treble bridge. There are 14 courses of 2 notes per course on the bass bridge. That makes this one a 15-14. These notes are tuned in unison, tuned together as you go up the instrument. Now, so that you can see how you should tune the instrument and make it a little bit easier for you as you begin tuning, and it's always a bit of a problem, but it does get easier. I find now that I can tune the instrument up in between 8 to 10 minutes and have it in good tune. You won't be able to do it quite that quickly as you begin, but I'm going to detune middle C where we're out of tune. Now there's 2 ways you can do this. If both of the notes were out, that middle C note, and tune up to it. We're pretty close right there. Now, since this note was in tune, then we can tune this one on up to it where they're both in tune. If you happen to go past it, it's okay. You just loosen off and tune back down to it until you have the notes in tune. You can then, from there, tune octaves across the instrument. You can tune the same notes. There's a lot of different ways that you can go about it. If you have an electronic tuner, what you will get, let me see if I can get this turned on. Whenever you sound that note, this needle will come up and actually indicate whether you're sharp or flat and the name of the note that you've played, all automatically. Now then, we had talked about scale patterns. Let's look at it on the Dulcimer. I'm going to try to do this upside down. Position marker, going 4 notes up. And when you see this position marker here, that's your indication that you need to go down to the next position marker. So we'll move across and down, go up 4 notes, and that's your scale. Now listen closely to what you have. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. And that's your scale patterns. Now on the treble side, same thing. Do, re, mi, fa, that's your 4 notes. Down to the left of the position marker. 1, 2, 3, 4. Very boring stuff. But you already know a song and just didn't know that you know it, because if you take what we just played and just turn it around backwards, you have Joy to the World. Just that simple, and already you're playing the Dulcimer. Okay, we're going to pause just a second, turn this around, let me get on the other side of it, and we'll begin talking about hammer patterns. Okay, now we had talked about scale patterns in the last segment. Now we need to talk about hammer patterns. What I did when I was upside down, I played the scale and I played it up in the key of G. We're going to move down on my instrument to the second position marker, which is the key of D. If you have a 12-11 instrument, then this will be the first marked course that you have on your Dulcimer. Now I played before with just one hand as I went up the scale. And that's real good, but you need to learn to use both hands as you play. So what you get into is learning to use left, right, left, right. Now the scale pattern I'm fixing to show you is really important that you learn this, and I'll show you why. Begin your scale with the left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Now that left hand's not going to do very much for you if you're right-handed. If you're left-handed, the right one's not going to be very cooperative. And this is just a training method that you have to go through, learning to do this. Now I had you start with the left hand. The reason I did that, look what happens if you start with the right. Right, left, right, left. Your last note is with your left hand, and you're immediately in a position where you have to cross under or over to get back to the other note on the bottom side of the treble bridge. Where if you begin with the left, then you go left, right, left. Your last note is with the right hand, which frees up your left hand to then go ahead and pick up those patterns. Now we're going to talk a little bit of technical stuff here and talk about an interval of a fifth, which is what you have across the bridge. And to boil that down in real simple terms, that means that once you go up these four notes, the space between this note and the note over on the left-hand side of that treble bridge is a fifth. That means simply it's the fifth note of the scale. So don't let intervals scare you or any of the other terms that we're going to talk about. It's just a matter of the notes that are there. Again, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Practice this over and over. Go through it time and again. If you would like to, you can do two notes per note. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Then you can go back and practice coming down. As you play, you're going to find that there are times that your hammers cross over, and you're just really going to get frustrated by it. It's really a simple thing to cure. All you have to do is begin the song with the opposite hand, and it will automatically clear itself. There's a real neat little song called the Irish Washerwoman Jig. Now I want to show this to you because it's, first of all, it's real simple to play, and it's going to accomplish two things. It's going, well, really several, but two of them for sure. You'll learn to use each hand equally well. We're talking about left, right. And also we'll get into the first thing, what we call cross bridge, which means that you're going to begin using notes from both bridges. So we're going to give our camera, okay? The song starts on the D note above C, which is an octave above middle C. So if you have a 15-14, it begins at the note above your fourth position marker. If you have a 12-11, it begins the note above your third position marker. The song goes like this. Now there's another part that goes in which you can learn at a later time. Right now, let's deal just with the hammer patterns and look closely at it. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. See, every note you're changing hammers so that you're automatically alternating. Now, if you start this song with the right hand, and you're in a position to have to cross that left hand over to get to it, or make a sudden jerk to get to the other side. So try to make a habit of always avoiding that crossing over situation, which will make it much easier for you to play whenever you get on up playing up to speed. Now there's a thing called embellishment. These are things that we do to tunes to make them sound fancier. And one of the first embellishments that you'll be learning from this tape is what's known as a roll. And this is a real simple little roll. You remember the Lone Ranger jokes? If where's the Lone Ranger? Well, he's gone to the dump, to the dump, to the dump, dump, dump. Well, that's the way this embellishment goes. You hit twice with the right hand, or hit it and let it bounce, and then hit with the left hand. So what you get, thump, 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 to the dump. Now when you take that embellishment and put that in the Irish Washerwoman, what you get spices it up, but it's nothing more than to-de-dum. Several years ago, I was selling mobile homes, and I listened to a tape on sales. And the guy said the only way you learn when to ask a closing question is to ask it too often and too soon. And it's obvious, if you never ask it, then you never know when you should have. The same thing holds true with embellishments. The only way that you'll learn when to use one is to use it too often and too soon. Now, right after I heard this tape and everything, a guy drove up on the lot and he wanted to look at a 3-bedroom mobile home. I run out to wait on him, and he said, "Will you show me a 3-bedroom home?" And I said, "I sure will. Will you buy it if I show it to you?" And he said, "No, I won't." And he got in the car and drove off. And I thought, well, I asked that question a little bit too soon. And you're going to find that with your embellishments. You're going to use them a little too soon. You're going to use them a little too often. But the only way that you'll ever master what you're doing is to go ahead and just use it and try it and be loose and be free with it. And again, let your hammers become an extension of yourself. As you're sitting and looking at your Dulcimer, by now you probably have a headache because you have so many wires and they're going so many different directions, and it really gets confusing when you sit and look at it. But if you'll notice, the strings come over the bass bridge, or if you have individual bridges, it'll come over it and it'll go either between bridges, or like mine, it goes through the hole here. And these come over from this side and go over, and they go under on this side. And when you're looking at this thing, you really get a maze of wires there, and you have trouble distinguishing what you're going to hit and what's underneath it. And the best way I found to counter that is not really to look at the strings, but I use what I call a field of vision. I focus my attention on the bridge about the center of the area where I'm going to be playing. Now, don't look at the strings themselves. It works kind of like a camera lens. If you're focusing here, then your eyes are going to pick up what's closest to you and not what's down underneath, or the strings that come over the bass bridge, which will make it easier for you to strike the surfaces that you're shooting at, make it a little bit easier to play. I very seldom shift my vision when I'm in the process of playing a song. I play mostly from side to side. You have a lot of duplicated notes on here, and rather than coming down to catch this D here, I'll use the D over on that side because I can see it. It runs right here. So as I'm playing, I get ready for that D note. I don't really have to look over at the note particularly because I can see that it runs right here. And that will help simplify it for you just a little bit if you don't spend so much time trying to focus on what's up and what's down, and just, again, center your attention just about on the bridge. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about chords. Songs are made up of chords, and as you play through a song, these chords change, and it will follow what's commonly known as a 1-4-5 chord pattern. That means that the chords are going to shift from the first note of the scale that you're in to the 4th note of the scale and to the 5th note of the scale. The easiest way to demonstrate on the Dulcimer, first of all, the key that you're playing in is a position marker, usually the note on the right-hand side here, or if you're on the bass bridge, the first note of that scale. So on my instrument, this is the key of D, key of G, C, and F, A, D, G, C up here, and then F is up here, which you don't have enough notes to play up in F there. That kind of gives you a reference point of the key that you're playing in. And let's take, for the 12/11s, because since you don't have the key of A down here to play in the key of D very well, we're going to begin this little bit of the program right at the key of G right here on the right-hand side of the 3rd position marker if you have a 15/14, or the 2nd position marker if you have a 12/11. To play a chord, you play the 1st note of the scale, skip the 2nd, play the 3rd, skip the 4th, play the 5th, skip the 6th and the 7th, and play the 8th. This is what's known as a 1-3-5-8. Now you can practice that. Just start left, right, left, right, left, right, left. You can play it 2 notes at a time. It doesn't have to be 1 note at a time. You can do 2. You can change it around. The music box dancer starts off. And that's a nice little exercise to use in becoming familiar with the chords. Now, I had mentioned a 1-4-5 chord pattern. This would be the root chord, which would be the key of G. The next logical chord in the progression would be the fourth note of that scale. So if we have 1, 2, 3, 4, that moves us up to the next position marker, which puts us into the key of C. And the way you play a C chord is the same way you played it in G. It's simply a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if you're playing chords along and someone's playing lead, then you can do something like this. A 5 chord, which is the fifth note of the G scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And since it's difficult to play all along this side up and down, you can drop the octave and use the same pattern, 1, 3, 5, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 3, 5, 8. Now I threw some new notes in there for you, because what we're doing is moving down into the G scale over on the bass side of the bridge. Now if you take that same pattern and move over to the bass side, 1, 2, 3, skip the fourth one, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's exactly the same pattern off of the bass side of the bridge as what it is on the treble. Move up to the position marker. A loop at you right then. Came up and used this note right here. This is A. I used that A rather than coming across here, which these are the same. You remember way back early we talked about duplicated notes, where you had notes that were the same. This gives you some playing flexibility where you're not stuck with using just a particular pattern. Here I start with the right hand, the left, the right, and the left, or you can start left, right, come across, and follow the 1, 3, 5, 8 pattern. This will give you a lot of flexibility in your playing to learn to use those notes that are the same across the bridges this way, to be able to change from one octave down to the next octave, and will really come in handy whenever you get with a group and begin playing. Now every song, as I mentioned, is made up of a chord structure. Now I want to show you a little tune that one of the first songs that I learned, called Sweet Hour of Prayer. It's real simple to learn, and as I began learning it, I worked just with one hammer, and I started using both hammers to get used to my right and left hammer pattern. And then I began thinking, well, harmonies would be really pretty in there, but I didn't really know where to go to get them. And I remembered back from the days of my childhood playing chopsticks on the piano, and you'd have a white note, which was your high note, would be your lead note, and then there would be a note in between, and a note below, which gave me the harmonies. And it was da-bum, da-bum, like this. This is what I was playing. So utilizing that same idea, or playing what's known as thirds in the musical scale, your melody note is the high note, and as a general rule, you'll skip the note in the middle and play the note below it for your harmony note. So Sweet Hour of Prayer then becomes this. Now if you'll notice, it doesn't always follow a strict two together all the way down pattern. You have to shift over. The reason for that, go back to your scales again, and remember that you have 4 notes on one side, and then you have to break that scale and the other 4 notes on the other side. So you'll pick up your harmony notes across the bridge. Okay, as I began working with that, I then moved on into the 1, 3, 5, 8 chord pattern, and the song began to sound like this, and maybe this is something that you can begin to work toward. This is a page from Linda Thompson's book, Tunes for Hammer Dulcimer. I wanted to show you most of the books that are written, and I'm sure the melody of a tune, but nothing really by way. This one gives you the note that you should play, a numbering system which corresponds to a chart in front of the book, and then also the hammer pattern. Well, this is a real great guideline, and it's a wonderful way to learn the tunes. But the embellishments that we're talking about are things that you're going to have to either hear from other people, or that you're going to see people doing in dulcimer festivals, or that someone's going to show you. But most of all, it has to be things that you're just on the dulcimer, and we'll work through golden slippers, and I'll try to show you a couple of things that you might could do to embellish it a little bit and kind of liven it up. Golden Slippers is a wonderful old traditional fiddle tune that's usually the D over on the left-hand side of the treble bridge. The reason for that, because of the way the chorus goes, or the bridge part of it, it makes it easier to get into it and move over and utilize some of your bass bridge. A song goes like this, and I'm going to vary my hammer patterns just a little bit. You'll see what I'm doing. I start with the right hand on the D, and it goes right, left, right, 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 left, right, left, right, right, right. Now, in one of the earlier segments, I mentioned that you have to have some flexibility whenever you're learning to use your embellishments, and not stick tradition or solidly with the right. Use what's known as a note above, note below embellishment on this. So if we start with right, left, right, then instead of getting on this one note and hammering on it, you come down and use the note below it, the note, and the note above. So you get this. Right, left, 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 right. So we're back to our traditional hammer pattern, and that keeps things in a good even flow. And one of the really neat things about the hammer dulcimer is the ability that you have to just change keys whenever you get ready. If you have a guitarist backing you up and you're playing Golden Slippers and he can't play in the key of D, then you're pretty well stuck. So all you have to do to change keys is just move across the bridge, and I come right straight across to G, and you use the same hammer pattern. Now don't change what you're doing, just change where you do it. Right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left. Same thing. Key of C, move up. Or F, you can move over. You can anywhere that you want to begin on the instrument, as long as you start that song at a marked position, then you follow exactly the same hammer pattern. It's just like now when we were doing the 1, 3, 5, 8 chord, of just moving where you do it and doing exactly the same thing. So it doesn't have to be complicated. Which, while we're talking about the chords, in your practicing the scales and the chords, have you gotten into that position yet where you started with the wrong hand and wound up in that crossover? Well, remember that the same way that it worked there, it'll work on Golden Slippers. If you get into that position, simply go back and start the song over and begin with the opposite hand from what you're doing it, and it'll rectify itself. Yes. Now I'll play it simple first. Right, 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 left, right, left, right. Now here it changes. Back to the right hand lead. Left hand lead. Now the chorus, or the bridge part, whoops. Now if we go back and remember our 1, 3, 5, 8 chord pattern that we talked about, and we're going to look at an inversion right quick. For the key of D, your 1, 3, 5, 8 chord pattern is right here, taking in 2 octaves. Since this D and this D are the same, then we can begin that D chord pattern right here. Hear it? It's the same thing. Now this goes back to looking for your patterns. So let's use the 1, 3, 5, 8 pattern on the bridge, and here's what it does to it. Okay, real slow. Now then, we move to a minor key. And the minors are so easy to play on the hammered dulcimer, and people are afraid of them because they're not aware of just how simple it is. Look at it. We have our traditional 1, 3, 5, 8 chord pattern. If you move up one string, begin your chord here, on the, in this case it's an A. You play the A, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then you're playing a minor. You can move up one more string and play the 1, 3, 5, 8, and you have the relative minor for that chord, for that key, and then you move up one more and you're back into your major chord pattern. So it's very easy to utilize the minors in the song. So let's take it slowly, using the note above, note below embellishment, and using the 1, 3, 5, 8 chord pattern on the bridge. And Golden Slippers should sound something like this. Now watch again, because I'm going to switch from the right hand lead to the left hand lead. And this is real good to get you into using both hands and learning to use each one of them equally well. So we start with the right hand. Third harmonies, the melody being the high note, the harmony being the note below, and here you switch to the left hand lead. As I mentioned earlier, it's a fun song to play, and just spend a little bit of time with it, work with it, watch your chord patterns, practice the note above, the note below embellishment, have a lot of fun with it, and work at go ahead and getting it up to tempo, where you can go ahead and bring it on up and really have fun with it. Well, I hope that you're having a lot of fun with this and really enjoying your hammered dulcimer. There's some theories, some embellishments that I want to cover with you just real briefly so that you kind of know what you have to look forward to. But I really want to encourage you, before you rush out and buy the second video, that you spend a lot of time with this one here and that you master each segment of it. And if you'll notice, I'm sure you've seen all the way through, when we finish a segment, we've faded out to black and then we come back in. We've done that so that you can go back and index through this thing and use your table of contents and the counter on your VCR. And you can log the numbers of where the segment starts and where it stops. And then you can reference that at any point, so you have a good way to go back and review each section of the tape and then take it step by step. But some of the embellishments that we'll cover on tape 2 really stem from what we've learned on this series here, back all the way back to the Irish washerwoman jig when we were talking about the roll. You can take that and expand it to 2 notes. You can expand it to 3, up to 4, up to 5, whatever you're fast enough to do. You can do it that way. There's an embellishment called the flam. This lets you come in and use 3 notes instead of just 1 or 2, which really fills it up and gives you a whole lot. A lot of arpeggios come back utilizing the full keyboard with the 1, 3, 5, 8 chord. We'll talk a great deal about that. And then there's also an embellishment called a flam, called a drum. That's where you get on 1 note and use it to accent. This one over here becomes a drum, and your lead over there. So these are some things that you have to look forward to. And just to show you how this can work into a tune, one of the questions that I'm asked very often is, how do you learn a song? And we've covered a lot of basic techniques, but we haven't really talked about all of the mechanics that go into learning a tune. Since I don't read any music, the only thing I can do is explain to you how I do it and hope that it will be useful for you. If you read music, you're way ahead of me already. So you have just a world of information out there for you that you can just go and pick up and begin to read and start to play. I have to hear a song, and whenever I hear it and have the basic melody down, something like the Kentucky Waltz, I learned this from listening to Jay Round on an album that he had. It's a wonderful little song, and the melody, I started with just the right hand, and it goes something like this. And then I came in and started using the left hand to try to, what I was trying to do is establish a hammer pattern and get the right-left pattern as soon as possible on the song. Then I started looking for the harmonies like we're using there. Then you can go and pick up the note above, note below embellishment that we just got through using on Golden Slippers, and it becomes something like this. And then use the 1-3-5-8 pattern. Those are all some things that we'll go into in the next tape, and I used every embellishment in that song that we'll be talking about on tape 2 of the series, except for the flam, which is jewelry used in traditional Irish music. It's a great little lick that you can use, but we'll move on to that here just in a few minutes. Well, I imagine by now you probably have 10,000 questions floating around in your head, and I really hope that I've answered more of them than what I've left you with kind of dangling. Unfortunately, due to the time that we have available, I couldn't cover everything that I really wish that I could on tape 1 of the series, and we will go into more detail on tape 2. One of the most important things I think that we can remember is that when we begin to play the tune, start slowly, start one note at a time, which is the reason that I brought some tapes along here to show you. These are the companion tapes. We get the camera books I showed you in the first of the series. This one is by Linda Lowe Thompson, Tunes for Hammer Dulcimer. This is the tape that goes with Carrie Crompton's book. Both of these tapes are really important as you begin to play, and take it very slowly. Now, I mentioned also that I don't read any music, and the only source that I have is other recorded works. First one's Russell Cook in Burleson, Texas. Russell is a master of playing the slow song, has great chord arrangements. This is his album, Timeless. Now, he has a new one out. He's got 3 tapes out now, I believe. But I listen to Timeless an awful lot. Jerry Reed Smith and Black Mountain did The Straightaway Child. Just an excellent cassette for listening to. I have 3 of my own. This is the last one I did. It's a bluegrass album. It's a lot of fun to listen to. But we feature banjo, mandolin, fiddle, and it really rips along. It probably wouldn't be much help. This is the second one that we did. The playing style is very simplistic. It features a hammer dulcimer on every song and some good material there for you to learn from. If you enjoy gospel music, my first one, playing style, I've been playing 8 months when I went to the studio and recorded this album, so the playing on it is really pretty simple. It'll be something that will be easy for you to pick up on and a great source to learn to play from. I have probably 150 or so cassettes of my own that I've purchased that I use just for sources of music, and it's a great way to learn a lot of the embellishments that you'll be wanting to use because you can hear other people when they do it. There are a lot of questions that people ask me. I'd like to address just briefly. Should I play standing or sitting? I don't know. That's up to you. I play standing up because I'm a performer, and I prefer to be up and be mobile. I know that you'll practice a lot more and a lot more regularly if you're sitting down because it's not quite so painful. It's not so hard on your legs and your back. Should I store my instrument or should I leave it out? that again is up to you. But if you have it sitting out in the room on a stand, covered over with a towel so it doesn't get dusty, you'll be more inclined to practice than if you have to go and dig it out of the case. How much should I practice? Again, it's up to you. I would recommend a minimum of 30 minutes a day. It's like anything else that you want to master. The more time you spend with it, the more capable you will become and the more quickly you'll be able to do it. I know a lot of people say, I've been trying to play that thing for 10 years and I can't do it. But once a year they get it out of the closet, they mess with it 10 minutes and say, yep, I was right, I still can't play it, and they put it back. Then you won't ever be able to do it if you do it that way. Like I say, lots and lots of questions. When you get an opportunity, go to every festival that you can and spend time talking to the performers. Russell Cook has spent hours and hours with me. John McCutcheon, as busy as he is, has taken time to talk with me. So go to the festivals and approach the players and talk to them, ask your questions. Now, we intend to do a revised version of this tape at some point in time next year or so. And we really would welcome your comments, any questions that you have, any of your constructive criticisms. Please send to us and let us know things that you would like to know on the next series or anything that you feel like would be beneficial to you. And we hope to see you on tape 2 of the series. Thanks so much and have fun.